Hi there. So I'm Nick. I run the Tumblr blog. My mom picked this URL, and it was a while ago that I asked some of my Tumblr followers to submit questions about comic books to me, and I would talk about those if they gave a shit enough to write in, and they did. So I'm gonna plow through them. I'm gonna try to keep rambling to some kind of minimum, but I doubt that's gonna happen, so get ready for that. And yeah, I'm gonna dive right in. Anonymous asks, if you could be any superhero, who would you be? And it's Spider-Man. It's like every time I think of the answer to that question, it's who would I want to be the most, who do I relate to the most, and whose powers do I think just kick wholesale ass? And it's Spider-Man. He is somehow both fits the kind of theme of the ninja, the brawler. He's super powered at the ass. Like, his strength level, I think, is really underestimated by a lot of comics fans and probably the people around him, because he plays it off like he's not able to lift a fucking truck, which he can, and throw it. Like, it's pretty neat. Anonymous asks, do you have a favorite Marvel, DC superhero movie? This is off the top of my head without doing too much critical thinking about it. I think my favorite DC movie is Batman Begins, and my favorite Marvel movie is Captain America Winter Soldier. I think Captain America Winter Soldier is, even without my pre-existing bias towards Marvel, I think it's a brilliantly made movie. It's well written, it's fast-paced, it's entertaining, it's funny, and I'm still overwhelmed by the fact that Chris Evans is a good Captain America, because when I found out he was cast as that, I was kind of pissed off. So that works. And then Batman Begins, because it's the one with the least amount of problems in terms of plot for me. I think the Batman Begins is the best movie. Dark Knight has the best acting. Dark Knight Rises has some of the best moments for me when it comes to that trilogy, because the Bane fight I've been waiting to see since I was like 7 years old. So when he finally broke his back, holy shit, I love that. But as a movie on the whole, it's Batman Begins, and then performance-wise, Dark Knight, and then for individual moments, Dark Knight Rises. Tumblr user Duchess Lizzie, hi, thanks for recommending Hawkeye. It's one of my favorite books now. Do you have a favorite big story arc? And I think what she's referring to is what you call event comics, yeah, they're called events. And pretty much every summer they try to jack up, because comics is not a huge industry, so you got to cut them some slack, because they're not doing as well as they used to. They're still trying to fight back to the heyday. And what they do pretty much every summer is something called an event comic book, where normally Spider-Man is doing Spider-Man-y things, X-Men are doing X-Men-y things, Avengers are doing their Avenger-y things, and then what you have is an event, so like an impetus for all of these people to come together so you can sell a shit ton of comic books by crossing them over. And there's a lot of them. In the last 15 years, there have been a shit ton of them in the Marvel Universe, and I don't look at DC's. DC has been shitting its entire bed in terms of their comic lineup in the last 5 years, but Marvel has been generating a like 15-year story that actually feels very satisfying. And the best thing I think they've done in there is something called Civil War. Civil War is essentially, and you'll see the Marvel version of the movie. In the comics, there is a group of teenagers, teenage heroes called the New Warriors, who have a reality TV show. And what they do is they received a tip that there was someone in this house, and they were going to take them down, and they were going to get good ratings and stuff. And when they get to the house, the camera crew and everyone, and they see what's happening, they realize that the people in the house are well outside of their weight class in terms of fighting. Like, they should not be doing this. There's a character called Nitro, whose power is to generate explosions outward from himself, and he remains safe even in the midst of all that, which I thought was pretty cool. And what they do is the New Warriors are seen going, we cannot fight these guys, they're outside of our weight class. And then the leader of the New Warriors basically looks at the cameras and goes, think of the ratings. So what they do is they go in anyway. And the problem is that they didn't do the research, they didn't scout the place, and what ends up happening is they end up fighting Nitro on the street, and once they punch him out of the house onto the street, they realize they're right in front of a public school. And what happens is Nitro just basically looks him straight in the eye, gets this maniacal grin on his face, and goes, you have no idea what you've done, and just creates an explosion in a place called Stamford, Connecticut, and it kills over 900 people. And from there, Tony Stark takes the opinion that superheroes should be subject to the same kind of regulations as weapons, guns. So you have to register with the government, whereas Steve Rogers, very old school, very private, personal freedoms kind of guy, says there's no way we're not doing this. And then there ends up being this huge fight. And my favorite part about that whole event is not just as an event, it was really well written, but as a comics fan, people I had previously agreed to with almost everything where we're like, yeah, that's a great issue because of this and this. We would end up kind of violently, very passionately arguing about like, fuck you, Tony Stark's right, fuck you, it's Cap. And I just thought anything that can create that kind of dialogue where you end up talking real world politics regarding a Marvel comic book, I thought that was pretty impressive. So that is my favorite event comic book. When it comes, Anonymous asks, I don't know if this question has been asked before, but what are some good comics that are more character driven than plot driven? Personally, I have a hard time with Heroes Quest story arcs, especially when the protagonist is male, but I don't want to overlook comic books altogether. Great point. Most of it is pulp serial when you look at the comics industry. It is just one story that continues ad nauseum with no real stakes because the character will live because their name's on the goddamn book. So as long as it's selling, they're gonna make it somehow. But some of the books that I managed to put together are Bone by Jeff Smith, which is still kind of hero questy, but it's well outside of the realm of superheroes and it falls more into epic fantasy. So maybe that'll turn your crank. Lazarus, written by Greg Rucka, with art by Santiago Arcas and Michael Lark, is like the Bourne Identity led by a female character with a very compelling past, and it's just a great story, and I didn't expect to enjoy it, and I ended up being like really into it. GCPD is another book. It's the Gotham City Police Department. It is brilliant. It doesn't focus on one specific character, and since it occurs kind of tertiary to the Batman stories, what you see is the real world man on the street reactions to the action and mayhem of being Batman and having all those villains. It has one of the most terrifying Joker arcs that I've ever seen because it's not Batman the great detective against the Joker. It's regular people who are usually the ones caught in the crossfire who are having to deal with this madman, which is insane. It's essentially like the TV show Gotham if it wasn't a steaming pile of shit. Blankets by Craig Thompson is a quiet and contemplative autobiographical comic book. I mean, it's well outside of Heroes Quest. It's well outside of standard, like, capes and cowls heroes, so I think it's a pretty fantastic read. There is Heck by Xander Cannon, which essentially, it's one of the most, like, surrealist and existential comics I've ever read in my life, because it explores so many aspects of what it means to be human, what it means to be good, what it means to be moral, and yeah, what it means to let go. And that's kind of a big deal. Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan. I mean, it is about the last man on Earth, but that means that every single supporting character is a woman, which is good if you want some representation there. It would be, yeah. There's also a monkey, and monkeys are great, so that's cool too. Ghost World by Daniel Clowes, made into a movie with Thora Birch and Scarlett Johansson and Steve Buscemi in like 1993 or 4 or something. I didn't research that at all. It's great, it's quiet, it exists outside of the capes and cowls, and it's very self-contained, and it's really, really good. And then Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which is a story about Jews living through the build-up and execution of World War II, where the Nazis are essentially cats and the Jews are mice. And that sounds kind of insulting, and it isn't. It is one of the most heartfelt pieces I've ever read. So there's that. Tumblr user Ryan Rios asks, if you were to assemble your own ideal lineup of X-Men, who would you include? And for me, there's some since I've been reading X-Men since I was 5 years old, that's 24 years worth of experience there. I kind of have an idea of what the team should look like. There should be a bruiser, a telepath, a brawler, a scientist, the conscience, and the leader. Bruiser, 14-year-old mutant Molly Hayes, who is just incredibly strong and just like on a team would be awesome to see this 14-year-old having to rein in and control this massive amount of power. For a telepath, Emma Frost, who is, as the name suggests, a bit of an ice queen, but deeper than that. So she fits a lot of the archetypes, but also she's a great storytelling device because she prods and antagonizes reactions out of people. The Brawler is Sabretooth. If you're not paying attention to X-Men comics, that makes sense. But Sabretooth has recently become a redeemed villain, so he would be the replacement for Wolverine, who is now dead. Again, if you're not reading comics, these are new things. And then for the Scientist, Beast, like always, the Conscience, I would say, is Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat. She's the one who holds the team together and asks, should we do this? Can we do this? Must we? And then for the leader, Storm, because Storm is one of the most badass characters in comic books, and I respect the living shit out of her. So there's that. And then for the last question, Anonymous asks, I've been thinking about starting to read the Inhumans, purely because I'm lame and like the character designs, but I'm not sure where to even begin. Any suggestions? There was an Inhuman series in the 2000s, or like right on the year 2000, called Inhumans, put out by Marvel under their imprint Marvel Knights. And to be honest, and here's the problem for any new reader, any character that has existed since the 50s or 60s when it comes to Marvel, if you want to jump into them, you have to jump in knowing that you're not going to read them from start to finish. So you have to be able to enter a story and be okay with the fact that you're not going to know everything in the first issue. They're going to talk about characters you haven't met yet. And then when you meet them, you will have a more full understanding of that first issue that you read. But the problem is, like, you just got to do your Wikipedia studying. You got to be like, okay, because to be honest, I mean, nerds are amazing at collating data and putting it on the internet. So almost any character that you want to become familiar with, when it comes to comic books, there's a Wikipedia entry for them, and that Wikipedia entry is just chronological. It is laid out. If you just want to know someone's powers and abilities, there's going to be a comprehensive list of like everything they've ever done. When I was looking up, out of curiosity, Spider-Man's strength level, you'll have nerds not only telling you what it is, but arguing about what it isn't, and what it used to be, and what it's changed to, and how it's evolved, and I just think that's pretty fucking awesome. So if you're willing to put in the effort, before you try to dive into a comic book, find out what comic you want to dive into, find a point that you're comfortable diving into, and research up to that point, because you can get the Coles notes for comic book characters pretty easily. But if you're going to do that, another thing that you're going to want to stay kind of careful of is don't get lost on Wikipedia, because that's also a really, really easy thing to do. So yeah, if you watch this, that's impressive. That is 13 minutes of me talking. So, well done, you. All right, yeah, thank you.